If you're passionate about freedom, liberty, and the future of our country, then Political Talk Thursday is for you. With the latest in politics and special guests, here's your host, Brett Mason.
And welcome into a Political Talk Thursday podcast. Brett Mason, your humble host. We talking about gun rights, your right to bear arms, the Constitution, a tyrannical government, a complicit court, and the concept of jury nullification, which is really the only hope this young lady has. We're talking about Shaneen Allen. She's facing a 3.5-year minimum prison sentence, a maximum of about 11 years, simply for exercising her constitutional right to bear arms and for being honest. She's 27 years old. She's a phlebotomist. She lives in Philadelphia. And she, last year, was driving over to Atlantic City to prepare, I think, for a birthday party for her son, something like that. When she crossed over into New Jersey, she was pulled over for a traffic violation. Now, she has a concealed carry permit. She's trained to use the firearm. She purchased the firearm because she had been robbed twice. Twice she was robbed. So she made the decision, I'm going to protect myself and exercise my constitutional right to protect my liberty, my life, my possessions. So she bought a .380 to use for personal protection. She'd only owned it a week when she got pulled over. She had valid concealed carry permits from Pennsylvania. She was pulled over for the speeding violation, and during the course of that conversation, as citizens are told they must do, she informed the law enforcement officer that she had a concealed weapon in her vehicle. So that was her first mistake. Honesty will get you in prison. That's what that gets you. She didn't understand or realize that her concealed carry permit was not valid in New Jersey. Basically, New Jersey doesn't give anybody a concealed carry permit, but they don't recognize other states' concealed carry permits. Now, there's 29 other states who have agreed to accept Pennsylvania's carry permits, and states have these agreements between each other, but not New Jersey. No, you will not. You will not exercise your constitutional right to bear arms in the state of New Jersey. Not only does it not recognize other states' carry permits, if you want to try to get one of these things in New Jersey, well, good luck to you. Their standard for concealed carry permits, they reserve them for people who can, quote, have a justifiable need. This basically boils down to people who are employed in security type work or can provide and establish an urgent necessity to carry a gun. How about the Constitution as a reason for carrying a gun? Of course, this is talked about many, many times. It's come up. The Court of Appeals concluded that this law was legal, was constitutional. That happened just a little over a year ago. So the courts, of course, aren't recognizing your constitutional rights. And when I say constitutional rights, I mean constitutionally protected rights. We don't have constitutional rights, and I'm not going to get off on that. Maybe that'll be a discussion for another podcast. That you don't have constitutional rights. You just have rights. You have God-given, inalienable rights. You were born with these rights. All the Constitution does is says, here's a document that is an agreement between the people of this country and the government of this country saying that the government will respect the constitutionally spelled out rights. That these rights are specifically spelled out in this Constitution and the government agrees to abide by them. It's spelled out to a T, like there's no ambiguity about it. But make no mistake, those rights did not come from the Constitution. Those rights came from your Creator. You were born with them. So when I use constitutional rights, understand that I'm using it in the context constitutionally protected right or constitutionally agreed upon rights. you don't need a constitution to have rights. You have many rights that aren't spelled out. Matter of fact, you have all rights. But that's another story for another time. So now she's going to go to trial. They offered her a deal if she pled guilty to it that they would give her 3.5 years in jail. Well, that's the minimum sentence. So I would agree with her. Let's go to court and maybe I'll get 12 people on a jury, or maybe they do 6. I don't know what the case is for this type of hearing in New Jersey. But maybe she'll get a majority of people who aren't psycho, and she'll get off. But that's what it's going to boil down to, because she's in violation of the law. She understands she violated the law, but she didn't know she was violating the law. That brings up a whole nother discussion, though. There can be no law that trumps the Constitution. So any law that's in direct violation of the Constitution is not a law, which clearly this law isn't. This concealed carry law isn't a law. It isn't a real law. So that brings in the discussion of jury nullification. Jury nullification is a very powerful principle, and it, just like we have the checks and balances between the legislative branch, with the judicial branch and the executive branch, and you have the division of powers, and there's checks and balances between them, so that theoretically, and I'm doing air quotes with that, theoretically, one leg or branch of the government can't override or overstep its bounds because there's checks in place from the other branches of government that would prevent that. People don't understand this, but jury nullification is also a very valid form of checks and balances. It ensures that for whatever reason, laws that violate natural law, violate human rights, violate your God-given rights, if for whatever reason they make it through, jury nullification is a way to make those laws have no teeth. And so all that means is that a jury, while fully recognizing that technically somebody broke a law, they still declare that person guilty in an act of jury nullification, or innocent rather, in an act of jury nullification, as a way to say this law is invalid. We understand this law is on the books, but this law is invalid. We do not convict this person. This person goes free. And it makes a statement. It makes a very strong statement. So if you've never read up on the concept of jury nullification, and there's several things that I advocate jury nullification for, this would be a good example. I mean, this is unconstitutional. This woman's constitutional rights are being violated in the worst possible way. And not only that, they're wanting to use her as an example. Now, come on. She's a mom who'd been robbed twice and was simply trying to protect herself. She went the legal route. She purchased a weapon. She purchased a concealed carry permit. And not only that, she was super honest with a law enforcement officer out of respect for him, I'm sure. So she's been nothing but honest and respectful every step of the way. And now they're wanting to use her as, quote unquote, an example. And that's phrases that they've used, using her as an example. So that's kind of crazy to me. I mean, I could understand you wanting to set an example for gangbangers and hoodlums and who knows, God knows what else, crossing into your state and breaking the law and all this type of business. Because you would want that to make the papers, and you would want them to see, man, maybe we shouldn't cross over there and screw with people, I can understand that. But using this particular case as an example doesn't make any sense to me. The Atlantic County Assistant Prosecutor Deborah Hay cites the word deterrence as the main reason that they're pursuing the case. There's a gun control activist, Brian Miller, who published a op-ed piece in the Cherry Hill Courier Post that by prosecuting this woman, they will improve public safety by discouraging Pennsylvania permit holders from carrying their guns over the Delaware River. Well, I don't think, had she known, first of all, she wouldn't have done it. But secondly, is that a big problem? To have a bunch of law-abiding, peaceful citizens crossing over the Delaware River with their concealed weapon, a constitutionally protected right. So it's just another example of a government run amok. A woman who is obviously a decent citizen, she's a law-abiding citizen, tried her best to do things by the book while at the same time protecting herself and her child, is now facing a minimum of 3.5 years, a maximum of 11 years in prison for committing no crime. She's committed no crime. I don't give a damn what they got on the books in New Jersey. I don't give a damn what kind of crap law you got on the books in New Jersey or Atlantic City. Screw you and your stupid unconstitutional law. It's not a valid law. The law isn't valid. No law can trump the Constitution of the United States of America. And no law can trump your God-given rights given to you by your creator at birth. You can write, look, it's words on paper. That's all it is. It's words on paper. It's meaningless. It's a lie. And screw it. So I'm pulling for this woman. The thing is, and you'll see these people rioting in the streets, but us constitutionally minded people, us God-given right-minded people, us people who understand sanity, you will not see us in droves protesting at the courthouse. And I will tell you from the very first one, I'm as guilty as anybody listening to this podcast. But we should be. They're not just violating this woman's constitutionally protected rights. They're violating all of our constitutionally protected rights. It will be another case that goes down as a precedent that will be used in the future as a precedent to support other cases where people's constitutional protected rights are violated, and they just stack on each other and they build a even stronger precedent until you can't even have a damn gun. You can't even though it's still in the Constitution, even though the right to bear arms is clearly spelled out in the Constitution, it will be a toothless tiger. It will mean nothing. It will have no teeth. It will be written and signed and in existence in our country for hundreds of years, but it will be meaningless because of precedent, because nobody stood up and fought. So, since I know full well that none of us are going to go to New Jersey and protest this trial, I would humbly recommend that we all email the prosecutor there. We email the police department, the sheriff department there. We send letters to your local representative and make them aware of this travesty of justice that's happening. That you email and send regular mail and call your state senator, as well as your local representatives, and then call both senators for your state. Emailing and calling the White House is probably going to be pretty damn useless considering who's in the White House. But that applies to most representatives and senators as well. But those are things you can do. And none of us take the time. Well, I can't say none of us because I do. My representatives know me pretty well. Especially when it's an issue like this comes up. Because I won't just call and email and bombard them once. I will set aside a full week or a full 2 weeks where they will hear from me 3 or 4 or 5 times. And if everybody that believed in the Constitution, believed in inalienable rights, that we were endowed by our Creator, that you believe that these court cases that are setting precedent, that are just going to make the future even worse, if all of us that believed that would have that same mentality, and they would just be slammed and overwhelmed, at some point in time, a difference would be made. So, here's what you need to Google if you want to Google the information on this and inform yourself. Her name is Shaneen Allen, Shaneen, Shaneen, Shaneen Allen, Allen. If you Google Shaneen Allen, concealed carry, New Jersey. You'll get to the news stories. One of the better stories about that is on Reason.com. It's one of my favorite websites, Reason.com, Reason.com. So, but there's stories about it everywhere. Google it. Call, write, email, harass, stand up. Don't sit down and lay around and then complain because nothing changes. And there you have it. Political talk for this Thursday. Brett Mason, thanks for listening today. Tomorrow is Friday. That means me and my boy Jamie Thomas is going to be in here talking about some Alabama and Auburn football with our Tigers and Tide podcast. We'll release that thing on Facebook. Make sure you like that Facebook page as well. It's Tigers and Tide. Facebook.com/Tigers and Tide. Facebook.com/Tigers and Tide. That's big fun. Like that page on Facebook. Check out the podcast tomorrow. Submit your questions and all that kind of stuff, and I'll talk to you then.
Thanks for listening to Political Talk Thursday. Make sure you look for tomorrow's podcast, Football Fridays. It's a panel of Auburn and Alabama fans talking smack in SEC football.